I was heartened by the effort, both in the House and the Senate, from Democrats and Republicans to come together on the last COVID relief bill, which was just passed and ultimately signed just after Christmas, I guess. But that really was spearheaded. It bubbled up generically from Democrats, from not from the leadership, but from a bipartisan coalition that kind of almost forced the leadership to address the issue, and eventually the negotiation process took place. Do you think that that's a potential model in the coming Congress, because the margins are going to be so close in both houses?
Yeah, I do, and that was a hopeful development. They still ended up with a carte blanche check for every American, which I think was unnecessary. If people are still working, they're not in need of an extra check. But it was much smaller than what had been proposed earlier, and what had been insisted upon by the president himself. So they're more modest supplement to unemployment insurance. Their recommendation around the Paycheck Protection Program and restoring that so that more businesses could benefit from that and keep their employees on the payroll, I think was masterful, and it moved us off the opposing sides that had maintained for almost 6 months, with the Democrats looking for $3 trillion of spending, much of which had nothing to do with the immediate crisis, and the Republicans, really lowballing it at the other end. They found a sensible middle ground. As you recall, and as most of your listeners would not recall, when I was in Congress, along with Charlie Stenholm and others, I was the leader of a faction of Democrats numbering roughly 55, 60 members of the caucus who were more fiscally conservative. And because the Democrats had larger majorities back in those days, it was important that a group of about that size be brought together around fiscal issues in order to kind of pull things back to the sensible center. Now, with much narrower majorities in both chambers, it doesn't require a group of 50 or 60. 5 or 6 can make the difference if they are stalwart and if they are courageous enough to stand up to the pressures. So I do have some optimism that in this closely divided Congress, a small group of moderates, centrist, fiscally conservative legislators can have a hugely important role.
Do you think we're entering a period where we see progress on issues or more gridlock? I see this tug of war that you're describing between the far left and the far right, and the need for the middle to step up and, I guess, play a power broker role basically in this legislature. But does that mean we're going to see more gridlock, or do you think we get action on key issues?
Well, I think unfortunately there's perhaps a majority in both caucuses on Capitol Hill, in both chambers, that don't mind gridlock because it serves their political purposes, their political agenda. But the Problem Solvers Caucus, the bipartisan group in the Senate, are in a unique position to sort of show a way forward. It doesn't mean they'll succeed, but I think it's hard for me to believe that even if they suspend the filibuster rules in the Senate and try to pass legislation on a 50-vote margin, with the vice president being the deciding factor, and that could be the scenario if the Democrats pick up both of those Georgia seats. I don't see the 2 or 3 more moderate to conservative Democrats that they need to make that happen going along. And even getting rid of the filibuster, it's hard for me to see those 2 or 3 moderate to conservative Democrats saying, yes, we want to break up the filibuster and allow one-party rule. So I'm cautiously optimistic that that in this environment, the center can show the way. And I'm cautiously optimistic that if Biden actually wants to get anything done, as opposed to just presiding over 4 wasted years, that he will understand that math and try to pursue that pathway.
And Congressman, you talked about, or we've all talked about, how deficits were smaller in the 80s and 90s relative to today, and how it may even be unrealistic, maybe in my mind especially, to balance the budget right now or even right away, given that we're at a $3 trillion deficit. You talked about trying to abide by PAYGO, ensuring that any emergency response doesn't make our long-term fiscal policy or fiscal standing worse. So I guess the question that I have is, given how dramatic the numbers are today, how different they are from when we last even had a balanced budget, what does fiscal responsibility look like today? When you're talking to the base of a party or policymakers, what should be the vantage point of what's considered fiscal responsibility?
Well, I'll borrow from my friend Charlie Stenholm, with whom I overlapped in Congress, and he and I continue to be involved with both Concord and the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. And he has said hundreds of times over the years, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So I think we're maybe in an environment where that's the best we can do right now, at least for the immediate future. Obviously, we know at Concord and at the Committee for Responsible Budget that that longer-term challenges like Medicare insolvency and Social Security insolvency are in need of serious attention. But at the very least, in the current climate, the best thing to do is to just stop digging the hole deeper, and that's where pay-as-you-go and other important policies come into play. That's where bipartisan centrist groups in both chambers need to understand the power and the influence they have in this moment with narrow majorities in both chambers to really assert themselves and to help put the brakes on.